So this lesson will look at the African American Civil Rights Movement from 1955 through 1975. The lesson objective is to examine the causes of the civil rights movement among African Americans. In this lesson, we will examine the causes of the civil rights movement. We will look at examples of radical action, coalition building, and legal action within the civil rights movement. So we got some vocabulary first. First up is segregation. This means separating people based on race. Next is a boycott. This means refusing to buy goods or services from a company you disagree with. And our last vocab word is nonviolent resistance. This means fighting to change a system without violence. So the Civil War ended in 1965, and this ended slavery, but it did not end racism. Southern states passed new laws to keep black and white people unequal. This was called segregation. Thousands died under this system as groups like the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, formed by former Confederate soldiers at the end of the Civil War, fought to keep segregation in place. This killed thousands of black Americans. If you look at the picture on the right, you see two water fountains. This is an example of segregation in the South. They would purposely set it up so the facilities for white people were much better than the facilities for people of color. Now, there was also racism in the North. Banks refused to give residents of non-white neighborhoods loans. They called this redlining. If you look at the map on the right, you can see that neighborhoods are colored either green, blue, yellow, or red. That graded them from an A to a D. A neighborhoods in green were considered great investments, and banks would loan people who lived in that neighborhood money to do things like buy a house or start a business. Neighborhoods that were in red and given a grade of D would not get loans for homes or businesses. Neighborhoods in red were almost always communities of color. People organized to fight this racism. Groups led by people including Martin Luther King and John Lewis staged nonviolent bus boycotts and lunch counter sit-ins in the 1950s. So people tried to build a coalition by raising awareness of the injustice of segregation in the South. They did this by refusing to follow the unfair rules and then showing the rest of the country how the power structure in the South reacted. And the power structure reacted with violence. We need to be very clear on one thing. Just because they were doing nonviolent resistance does not mean that they were not brave and they were not risking their lives and their bodies. People who sat at the lunch counter sit-ins were attacked, and when the police showed up, they did not arrest the people attacking the people sitting at the lunch counters. They arrested the protesters rather than their attackers. Now, some groups felt that nonviolence was not enough. Leaders like Malcolm X and groups like the Black Panther Party encouraged African Americans to be proud of their heritage and to be prepared to defend themselves with violence if necessary. Civil rights groups also provided services in their communities that the government did not. For example, the Black Panthers helped provide free breakfasts for school children. Radical action like providing free services the government did not provide and being prepared to defend yourself with violence if necessary were both parts of the civil rights movement. Finally, legal action was also taken. In 1954, the Supreme Court made segregation illegal in Brown versus the Board of Education. And in 1964, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act, outlawing discrimination based on race, sex, color or nation of origin. The picture on the right shows Thurgood Marshall, one of the lawyers who helped win the victory in Brown versus Board of Education by using his legal expertise. These are the sources that were used to create today's video.